It's some sort of, when you get the military training, it's a mental indoctrination.
Okay, let me give other people also to contribute to this conversation before it's over. Let me give Brother Mafafa, and then Comrade Mompati, and then Comrade Ofwete in that order. I'll give Comrade Sonia. So, Comrade Mafafa, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes of your opinion in regards to the topic.
Greetings, leaders present here. Thanks, Comrade Jim. I think you leaders are discussing a very important question on the issue of Niger and the issue of the military coup. I think what we needed to understand, as we have mentioned, about how Sangara was able to penetrate inside the military of an enemy, risk his life. But after that, after being successful, he was also in a position to transform the society into the right direction. As far as I'm concerned, looking what is happening on Niger, I find it that the military have a backup of the people. Then I don't understand how these imperialist forces then define the democratically elected president who have subjected the Niger people into extreme poverty and suffering. Because if you look at the streets, the numbers of the people there, they can tell you that the military coup have a popular view of the society. That military coup, I was speaking with one of the forces, one who was serving one of the forces of King Mswati, and he was saying as such, even the way Mswati operate, the dictator Mswati operates on our society. You see, if such, it can serve as a lesson to other forces in the country, because even if the forces can take a decision to overthrow Mswati using that coup, I can tell you in Swaziland, the people can be behind that coup, because if you understand the setup of the system. But what we have to learn about King Mswati, the leaders and the commanders of the military are his siblings, are his friends. He does not appoint anyone to such position of authority. I think that is why I'm saying the issue of France, because the fact of the matter is that France want to fight its war in Niger. I think the issue of democratically elected into position, why are they going to send the military to Niger to intervene and reinstate a president that the same people does not want? Because now it seems like they are going to fight the people of Niger, because they are the people that are on the street defending their president, and that's the critical a question I think we need to address and look deep. We say, if ECOWAS continue with their decision, it means now it will be the people of Niger against them, but they are still calling that democracy. I think that I don't know what leaders can say on that matter, but I think that the strategy that have happened in Niger should also set as a lesson for us on this side. But Africa is still going to experience military coups. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mafafa. I'll also read one quote again that I'll share in the screen before I move to Comrade Mompati, who will share his view after this. The quote I've shared in the screen here, Nkrumah says, the last quote here, that the mass of the people can never become the agents or partners of neocolonialism. The functions of neocolonialism is to exploit, not to share with the people. In like manner, imperialism, the father of neocolonialism, does not share. It grabs and exploits the people. It is the people, therefore, and only the people who can save an African or Asian state from your colonialism and imperialism. Welcome, Comrade Mompati. Can you share your view? Tell us who you are and probably what do you have in regards to what's the story you are having in Niger and conversation in Niger. And welcome to our class being the first time. Comrade Mompati Kadie. Comrade Mompati Kadie. Yes.
Hello. Hello, comrade.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah, this is Mompati Kadie from Botswana. Sorry, I just joined now. I'm not sure what is the topic on the table.
Okay. We are discussing the situation in Niger as in our first phase here. What's going on in Niger? What is your take in what's going on in Niger? How do you see it? And what is the way forward for Africa? Should we go join the Niger soldiers to fight against the French soldiers and West in Africa? Is it right for Nigeria to invade Niger, even though they have done so in the past? ECOWAS has done so. Is it right? And if it is right, who is going to suffer? Is the military officers going to kill military officers? Or is the military officers going to kill Africans to reinstate one puppet leader, one puppet leader, who they think that his life matter more than the people in Nigeria who they are going to kill in the process of reinstating the person? So probably that's what we are discussing. And if you are not able to share your main now, we'll give you time so that you can share your main later, so we can move to somebody who is ready to share his thinking in regards to that. Comrade Kadie?
Yeah, and let's move to the next comrade.
Okay. Comrade Ofuete Eugene, are you able to share your thinking in regards to this conversation?
Thank you, my party leader. I'm proud to say so. On issues of Niger, I think leaders are the one letting us down. The top leaders, once they are elected, they are forgetting the constitution that leads the country. They are not implementing it that the way it's supposed to be. Then Coup'S taking on governance. It depends with the spirit and the target. Why are they taking it? Others have that Others have that self-function for taking the government, not the support for the citizens. Then my thought was, if we can take time to educate young youth, young people, leave alone the aged, now the young from 40.
Comrade, we can't hear
downwards.
You. I think
in Africa.
Okay.
All over. Sorry?
You can proceed.
Yeah, if groups can be formed to educate the young on how to lead, both politically, administratively, can be better. And still training our Coup'S in our countries in Africa, not outside. Thank you.
Okay, but thank you for your contribution. As we continue this conversation, my question is, really, we have problem with our soldiers. I was speaking to one of our members who is a retired soldier who is willing to go and fight with the Niger people and stand in solidarity with them. But the military officers do take oath to protect the nation. When did they turn out to be puppets of leaders? Because I don't think the military officers should take orders from political leaders to go kill people, to be commanded like kids. Military officers do take oath to protect the nation and defend the nation. And that's why the Niger military officers are acting to protect their nation. But their military officers who are under the puppet's influence, who want to be sent to go or cause commotion. I think our military officers also need proper training and the consciousness and understanding what is their real responsibility as far as African continent is regarded. And of course, as we've said, we've realized that the weak point is that the military officers are not trained in Africa. They're trained by the West and former colonies. And therefore, that is the first thing that must be corrected. And as Nkrumah said, we need to organize an African training for military officers and have a military officer that can protect Africa. Today, UN has their military officers, but how about Africa? We are going at war, yes. But in fact, the problem in Niger is that the French already have a military base in Niger, which means it's not that they are fighting to get into the space, they already have a space there. Those bases are existing even in Kenya and all over. What's the basis for? Why don't the bases go back to their country? There's no African military base abroad. Why do they have their bases here? There's no African country that go to oversee the election. They are so-called perfect democracies in their countries. Why do they come for our elections and oversee our elections in Africa? So it's a whole mix-up of things, but let's continue these discussions in the next maybe 10 to 10 minutes before we join the next conversation. And Brother Michael, kindly try to reach out to Brother Fokwa if he's in a position to do the presentation, or we can continue our conversation.
I'll try and call him and get back to you. Okay, I'll call him, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sister Comrade Soma, are you able to share anything in regards to the conversation you've had so far, in regards to what's going on in Niger? What's your thinking? What do you think is the right way forward for Africa and the people, what they call for all Africans in Africa? What should we do in regards to what's going on in Niger? Sister Soma? Comrade Soma, can you hear me? Soma and G. Okay. If you're not able to unmute yourself, maybe.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes,
Sorry,
proceed.
it took me a while to link on.
Thank you. Proceed. Welcome. Welcome.
Many thanks.
You can proceed, Comrade Soma. We could hear you. So just proceed and share something.
Yeah, well, I'm basically very new to the whole concept. So I'm taking in the information and seeing what I can learn from the experience.
Okay.
But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
That's much appreciated.
I'd just like to say, I tried to ring Fokwa. He hasn't returned my call. I've tried to call him twice now, Brother Pigeon, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, Comrade Coco can try to follow up on Comrade Fokwa as we have the conversation going on. I know you can be able to follow up on Comrade Fokwa. I know Comrade Mafafa's hand is up, but I want to give Comrade Lawal, who is the neighbor to Niger, to tell us, as people of Nigeria, do you support the action by your President Tinubu to go and attack Niger? And if you don't support it, what are you doing as people of Nigeria? What is your reaction to help actually do away with this imperialist guy who want to act on the imperialist puppet system? Comrade Lawal? Comrade Soma, I'll give you a chance. I've seen your hand up if you still wish to speak. But let me first of all have Comrade Lawal. Dauda? Comrade Lawal, you can proceed. Comrade Lawal, are you able to speak? Okay. Comrade Soma.
Sir.
The network is just
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody in the house. Good evening. Nigeria is not a one-party system. Northern Nigeria. Yeah, can you hear? Hello, Comrade Pigbin.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Proceed.
Okay. So you see, Nigeria, 90% of the Nigerian, they are aggressively against the decision of the Nigerian president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for taking the decision
Your network, comrade, your network.
We can't hear you, sir. We
Comrade,
can't hear you. You can turn your camera off. Try turning your camera off, sir.
You know, take charge in Nigeria. Have a border. We have a border with.
Comrade Lawal, I've muted you to let you know
Yeah,
that we
can you
cannot
hear
hear
me?
you. Work on your network first. We can't
Can you
hear
clear
you.
me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me somehow?
Now we can
you
hear
hear
you.
me now?
We can hear you now. But what we suggest you do is turn your video off. You'll get more bandwidth.
Oh, I off my video already. My video is off.
Okay, I think we can hear you now. I think Brother Pigeon, we can hear him now. He should proceed. Brother Pigeon, what do you think?
Okay, you see, in Nigeria, 90% of Nigerian citizens, they are against the decisions of Nigerian president for taking a decision to go among Nigerian soldiers in Niger, because Nigeria is a friendly country with Niger, and Nigeria is having a border with Niger, and the border that is in Nigeria, and most of the northerners, they have a kind of a border town with Niger, whereby you see most of the Nigerians in Kano, Kaduna, Zaria, Yobe, Kazina. They are drivers in Nigeria. They are Marwa 3-wheel bike. Most of them, they are neighbors to Nigerians, and we know what they are passing through. We know what they are going to fix in their country. So the decision of the president is a decision of a puppet. He is a puppet. I must tell you, I must confess, the Nigerian president is a puppet to the West. I'm telling you this, please quote me right. He's a puppet. He is being used. He was, elected illegitimately. I'm telling you, the case is still in court. I can send videos to you. You can Google it, you will see it. The case is still in court. The election that made him to become Nigerian president today was rigged. The election was rigged. He is still in tribunal courts now. Please, we are strongly
what are you
against
doing, people of Nigeria? What
we
are
protested today.
people
There
of
was
Nigeria
protesting
doing?
Kano today. Let me send video to you today. There was a protest in Kano today. There was a protest
That's
in Kano
great.
today. You can get it on YouTube, then you can get it. There was a protest in Kano today. There was a protest. We are highly against it. And the Nigerian Senate did not approve it. They did not approve it. It's a unilateral decision. He took a unilateral decision.
Okay,
So
I
that
think
is
you
my
need
point.
to move the conversation further. If Tinubu will proceed to attack Niger, then the Nigerian people must start the process of removing Tinubu. They must now turn to Tinubu and remove him, because he's the problem now again. So if you want to make problem with the neighboring countries, we must start thinking of how can we remove Tinubu, because we cannot allow him to cause bad blood between Niger and Nigeria, who are sisters and brothers, and we cannot allow him to be used to kill Africans on African soil. Simple.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You see, let me analyze that area.
Your network is poor. Your network is poor. Comrade Lawal. Okay, Comrade Soma, Comrade Lawal.
Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. When the network is poor, I know the network is poor. Can you? Network is poor. I'm sorry.
Comrade Lawal, we can't hear you. Your network is having a problem, and I think he has left the group. Allow me give Comrade Soma. Comrade Soma, Comrade Lawal, I'll give you time to speak later. Your network is not proper. Let me get from Comrade Soma first, then I'll come back to you, Comrade Lawal, please.
Absolutely. I think on that note, I'm from the Gambia, and we've had a recent speech by our, frankly, failure of a president in full support of the West. It's angered a lot of people on all different levels. Those who are not particularly politically active are angry that he hasn't sorted out his own country, yet he's willing to invest us in a fight that he sees fit. And others who support the Pan-African agenda are furious, saying that by standing out in support, denigrating a nation that simply wants a fair deal for themselves and their people is you know, completely against African prosperity. So on that level, I think I can speak with some confidence. I'm not fully aligned with how it's in full alliance with you know, the specific agenda that we have. But from my opinion with this, I feel that there's really not enough being spoken about the effects of separation. I think with all industrial states, they've gone from ground zero and accepted that they will start from ground zero and build themselves up. And I think that talk of Africa gaining its prosperity needs some sort of an economic plan that will enable us, like Singapore, for example, within a short period of time, within 20 years, to become the global superpower that we should be. And that's kind of, I'm curious to hear what the thoughts on that would be.
Oh, okay, thank you in that concern, and thank you for sharing your thinking. I think my screen has disappeared because I've shared the host back to Comrade Kwame. I was sharing the screen in regards to the cause of Kwame Nkrumah, but I think they have disappeared because I was sharing the host to Brother Kwame back to Brother Kwame. But we can still continue the conversation. So yes, we've been having this conversation for the last 1 hour. We've been still waiting for Comrade Fokwa to join us, but we are still on the Niger conversation.
Yeah.
And I'll really be interested to hear, Sister Soma, what was the specific interest topic you are saying you want to hear about?
Well, I don't often, I hear, and I completely understand that really for Africa to become prosperous, we need to remove the shackles. We absolutely need to gain autonomy on our capacity for industrialization. We need to stop infighting and start fighting together as a continent in order to gain any sort of foothold. We've got a lot to fight against, not only mental shackles, but also economic shackles and political shackles, of course. Ideological shackles. There's a lot of nuances in any theory. And again, even with the book that we're reading, we're advocating to speak Swahili, which I don't speak. I speak Wolof fluently, which is not my tribal language, but the language that my parents, who were from 2 different tribes, communicated in together. I was born and bred in the UK. And for that reason, my parents decided that the first language I would speak is Wolof, a language that our entire family would be able to speak together, and that I would learn English, as I did very fluently, at school. You know, this even the text that we're reading. I studied law, so I'm very conversant with difficult rhetoric and intentionally confusing rhetoric, and I struggle to get through the conscientism text. Which is why, you know, initially I was a bit hesitant to make a comment and to speak out. And I'm getting my head around it. I love delving into things that are difficult because I think that's how we grow as people, to understand it and then be able to ask questions as we go forward. But I feel that throughout all of my observations, I feel that if, that there's not much discussion as to what happens at ground zero to ready the masses. Here in the Gambia, I've been back home for the last 10 years and engaged on various projects. By projects, what I say is, what I do is I go in as private companies that engage the youths and engage a new way of thinking. Sometimes I use funding money, but I always make sure that it's following my own agendas. I'll happily trick them with with proposals, but ensure that one of the major teachings is independent thought and thought for yourself as a nation and the African continent as a nation is something that I instill. One of those is where we actively rebel against political activism. So what it was when our major electric company was failing, and that was failing businesses, we stepped out and we engaged the masses. When our president, Yahya Jammeh, was due to leave, we were one of the forerunners when the people who have claimed that they were the ones who helped, we were the ones who stayed and put up billboards, spoke to the masses, ensured that the whispers became a loud voice, and have stepped back since to ensure that those who are now in power, like President Barrow, are held accountable to whatever degree that we can. One discussion that is rarely had, and that I have difficulty when I'm trying to sensitize the masses in that things need to change and that NGOs aren't there to help us, they're there to help themselves, is that my feeling, I'm not an economist by any stretch, but my feeling is we'll have to agree to go to ground zero to remove those shackles. That means removing anything that they've given us, remove the stability and the things that we settled back on. A lot of the middle classes and the upper classes rely on having these UN, NATO, etc. positions in order to gain wealth. Some of them do good with it, not many do. They become exhausted and lack empathy for those beneath them. But I think that it's difficult to make change when you're saying to people, okay, listen, you're going to go back to zero and you're going to have to learn to build up. You're going to have to learn proper entrepreneurial and proper negotiation skills and understand the assets that you hold in order to be able to hold those close and to be able to engage those to create economic wealth and prosperity for everybody. And that's a conversation that I feel it may be due to my lack of understanding of the concept as a whole, isn't discussed often. And I was wondering what your thoughts on that, because really with Niger, for me, I agree. I think really looking at the stats, 85% of your wealth is held. In order for you to have even 1% of that back or have any accounting, you have to go to the person who holds that wealth and is prosperous as a result of it. It's ridiculous. You'll never really, basically what they are is a holding state, a satellite for France to become prosperous. And then people living in Niger and in other Francophone countries are simply being handed out crumbs of other people's wealth. As a nation, you'll never prosper that way. And they're being left also with, the nuclear mess. Anything that France doesn't want to do on their own soil is being done. We're seeing that in Gambia. We're a tiny state, 2.2 million, which is smaller than those cities in all of your regions. But I see that in the microcosm that we live in, where Francophones are being given more relevance here. So we saw it coming way, way, way before, West Africa's version of the Arab Spring, and it was something that would, of course, hit home once people become more aware.
Okay, thank you, Sister Soma, for actually for the first time joining us. Of course, you tried before, and you've been with us for the previous old group in Consciousism and this group, but you have highlighted very important points in regards to the level of your understanding in our Consciousism and what we do as a group. As you read the quote that I shared, is that Nkrumah said that in order to halt foreign influence in the affairs of developing countries, it is important that we study, we understand, we expose, and we actively combat neocolonialism in whatever guise it may appear.
Absolutely.
He says, for the methods of neocolonialism are subtle and varied. They not only operate in the economic field, but also in political, religious, ideological, and cultural spheres. Therefore,
Absolutely.
our class, we have been engaged much on the research. I've been doing the research in this, because we believe that we must have the research and the proper data of the material condition of our people. We must be able to
Which is
have the
another
research of the
problem.
mineral resources.
Which is
Yeah, we
another
must be
problem,
able to
because
have
all
the
of our data is given to us by NGOs who really don't work for us. It is scattered, it is incorrect. The fields that I work in, I could easily stand and disregard all of the data with anything that I've spent time working in. It's abhorrent.
It's true. So we have been doing that. We were supposed to have a presentation today on the spiritual aspect and the cultural aspect. There's a team working on the research as a class to present that here. I've been working on the economic aspect and political aspect. So we are not only having these conversations for conversation's sake. We are actually going down to do the research and the understanding, so that together we can now move to the mass awakening and mass movement and mass education. Because Nkrumah recommends that the masses must be conscious. And in order for us to make the masses to be conscious, we must be able to understand what they go through, and we must be able to use that understanding to prescribe the way forward that is necessary and relevant to Africa. You see, consciousness is a philosophy for Africa on African context. It is the only philosophy and ideology that can take into consideration the affairs of Africa and actually can prescribe revolution for Africa based on the African context. And this is what we are trying to study. But today we have an open conversation, but I'll give Brother Michael and Brother Kwame to respond on the key issues you've raised, but also to inform members here what we do and actually the conversation we've been having and where we are going as a class. So this is an open conversation today. Brother Michael, then probably Brother Kwame can also respond to this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'd just like to say the comment from the sister about economics. You see, from Sister Soma. Yes, I think that is something that we have to go into very deeply. And we have been, I always say over the last 10 years part of this group, we've sort of conveniently not delved into enough depth. You have to understand the economics of nation building. There's certain things have to be in place. And we need to do investigation into that. And I think it has to be approached scientifically, because there'll be different variations depending on what country you're dealing with or which region. Because the solutions for a country in West Africa may be different to the solutions in East Africa. So these are things that we're going to have to look at. And we need to study it properly and in depth as an academic discipline. Right, but but tonight we were particularly talking about Niger, and I'd like to ask if Nigeria has the intention to intervene in Niger and to involve themselves. If there is their intention to involve themselves in a long war, who is going to fund it? Because I understand the Nigerian military have been struggling with Boko Haram, much less involved in a traditional warfare. I understand they have a limited experience in waging international warfare. This is what I understand. And if they do intend to do so, they will be borrowing money to buy weapons from the US or the Americans or the French, and they will further indebt their country. There is no such thing as a free lunch. They will borrow the money, and it'll be a greater debt burden on the Nigerian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Sister Shoma, you can respond, then I can go to Comrade Ras Spala.
Yeah, just a quick observation. Someone who knows a little better about the political state of Africa, I had a conversation with them recently about Niger, and they were saying that basically with even Niger as a, he gave me a very nuanced viewpoint of that, is that as a military coup, the military is trained and armed and owned by Francophone countries. It's not necessarily freeing Niger, and that gave me a whole new kind of broader picture of it. What are your thoughts on that? As we've been talking about puppet masters and that, apparent comrades aren't always comrades. I know that from here, that our president has opted to have francophone military instead of furnishing the Gambian military. There's many reasons why that would be. I mean, I don't know what military intervention Gambia could provide. There's like a group of maybe, I think, have 4,000 soldiers, something utterly irrelevant, cannon fodder, basically, if we were to be sent, which is something that's not being spoken about sort of in international terms. But what are your thoughts on that? In that, whilst we're freeing Niger and allowing them their coup, that essentially what we're doing is offering them something that could potentially be a French owned coup, very much like we had here, where we took a military leader out who was also brought in by the British and the Americans. I've got first-hand experience having been a relative of the previous president of the Gambia, who was actually due to retire and wanted to retire. 22 years of dictatorship. Now we're in with someone who was trained by Britain and has been one of the first people to step out and show that he is not with his people, that he's not with Africa, and that is outwardly making statements against political statements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the nuances there?
Thank you for that question. I would like to invite Brother Kwame to take over, but also to try to guide us in regards to that question. Brother Kwame, kindly take over and maybe start with that question, and maybe you can guide us on how to respond to it.
Yeah, thank you. I missed a lot of what Sister Suma had to say earlier. As you know, I joined the meeting slightly late. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me
Yes, we
okay?
can hear you.
Yeah. So I missed a lot of what Sister Suma had to say. So I got what she said in the last 10 minutes. And Sister Suma is a very active thinker. I can see she thinks a lot, has been engaged in a lot of thinking, which is what we need on the continent. Sister Suma has a lot of thinking. She's done a lot of thinking, and she's put on the table a lot of things that we could discuss for today. So Sister Soma, when you say that it will be a French coup, what do you have in mind? When you say it might end up being a French coup, what do you have in mind?
Well, my thinking is observing from, again, a very unschooled point of view. And as you say, I'm very much a questioner, very much of a two steps.
I think if I may say so.
Yeah, thank you. That's a huge compliment, and I'd love the fact that you've observed that and not taken offense, which is fantastic. Yeah. Basically, for me, I wonder whether someone who is part of the military, who's been trained and schooled and installed and financed, let's be honest, by France, are they a capable leader of our new revolution? I think that the ideas that have been proliferated simply due to the fact that Niger has, it's been a long time since a discussion. I've been for ages, since I found out that CEFA basically leaves Senegal, which is our neighboring country, with 15% of their GDP every year that they can't have access to unless someone says, here you go, we'll give it to you in this way. That offended me. So the state of affairs is certainly not fair, but I wonder whether or not someone who is in the military for Niger is on our side. I think in the group, actually, there was a conversation about, I think earlier this week, regarding whether allies were really our allies, where their
Yeah,
intentions truly lie. I think that if we
yeah,
focus on what our agenda is when we're saying
yeah,
things are wrong,
yeah.
not necessarily fight for Niger's military, but fight for Niger's financial future,
But you
their
see,
economic future, their economic independence.
you see, Sister Soma, you see that is
Mhm.
that is putting the cat among the pigeons, the way you put it. You see,
Yeah.
the question is, uh, uh,
With the masses, I would obviously never bring
question,
that nuance, but I would
yeah,
say, what are you fighting for? Are you
yeah.
fighting for
So the
economic
question, yeah,
independence, or are you fighting because Niger's army wants to maintain political power?
yeah. You see, there are many ways to
That's how I
approach.
said it to the
Yeah,
people that I
there are
discussed.
many ways to approach your
Mhm.
thoughts,
Yeah.
and yes, we are not offended by your thinking. That's what we want. We want thinkers.
Mhm.
We want thinkers who can think very deeply about our situation. And so, yeah, that's what we need.
Mhm.
There are many ways to approach your question.
Mhm.
One way to approach is to say, for instance, you have heard of a guy named Magafuli, haven't you?
Yeah.
And
Very
you know,
briefly,
and you know
but
what happened,
yeah.
and you know the story in a nutshell, don't you?
Recap it in a nutshell, because as I say,
Well,
I've been schooled on British. I could tell you about the
yeah.
British, whatever. However, now in the last 10 years and more recently, as I've become more involved in African politics,
Well,
I've
not,
been learning
yeah,
more and more
Magafuli.
about.
Yeah, Magafuli is a Tanzanian, I believe, a Tanzanian president who, before he became president, studied his country from the inside, especially the civil service,
Mhm,
worked out all the neo-colonial strategies that the civil service was using,
mhm,
became president, and closed all the loopholes. And then when
mhm.
he came, he was killed. That is what the story says.
Yeah.
There's no proof whether he was actually killed. We just heard that he had been killed. He had been
Mhm.
killed. Now, that then,
So could I bracket you just for a second? When was this?
this was during the COVID era and just after COVID.
Recently. Okay.
This is very recent. So the question then
I've heard his
is,
name, but I've
then,
not had a context as to when it was.
yeah. So the question then is, well, why did Magafuli think that he could fight neocolonialism alone?
Mhm,
What
mhm,
made him think that he could have made Tanzania a post-neocolonial state
mhm.
that was not controlled by imperialism
Yeah.
by himself? What made him
Mhm,
think that?
mhm.
Because the whole point of Kwame Nkrumah, whose book we study on Thursdays, and as you're a
Yeah.
thinker, I will need you there, is that when Ghana got independence, and Nkrumah said on the podium that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of Africa,
Mhm.
which meant that Ghana alone cannot defeat neocolonialism,
True.
right? And he then told his fellow presidents that unless we quickly form a continental government,
Mhm,
we will all be taken out one by one. All of us will be removed from office.
mhm,
And some did not understand, some disbelieved, some thought it was impossible, some were
mhm,
fighting him ideologically. But
mhm.
one of those who fought him later on, also a president of Tanzania, interestingly, called Nyerere,
Mhm.
Julius Nyerere, said that it took him 10 years
Yeah.
to understand the
Mhm.
point Nkrumah was making. In fact,
True.
we have Brother Coco here. Can I see? Let me check. I think Brother Coco is here. Yeah,
Might
Brother,
I
yeah,
add
Brother,
that
Brother
the whole
Coco is here.
situation in
And
Africa
hold on.
really
Yeah, hold on.
reminds me. Remember
Yeah,
during
hold on.
the Nazi
Hold
era?
on. Sister,
Mhm.
Sister Summer, hold on. We have Brother Coco here. Brother Coco will or can share with us because he has presented on the book called White Malice, in which
Yes. Yeah.
in which Julius Nyerere, apparently, Brother Coco can't confirm that. He has unmuted himself, so he can't speak. Where he said that it took him 10 years to understand what Nkrumah was saying. Brother Coco, can you just come in and share for us? Yeah.
Absolutely, you are spot on there. So Nyerere was a teacher himself, one of those few educated African leaders at independence. In fact, he was fighting for both independence for Mozambique, fighting for independence for Zimbabwe. So he did have clout about himself. And so in most of the meetings they met with Nkrumah, Nkrumah will start telling them about new colonialism, start telling them about how they are being controlled from abroad. But Nyerere, as well as some of the others, will say to him, no, Kwame, you are the one who is telling us propaganda. They said Nkrumah was telling them propaganda. So after Nkrumah's death, Nyerere said this to himself. He said, we used to have robust discussions about this, but after Nkrumah's death, it took me 10 years to actually read, understand, to see what Nkrumah was saying. So that's the thing. Nkrumah was like head and shoulders about all the others of his time. He was a man two-way, far ahead of his time, if I may say. The others were educated in the colonial systems. But Nkrumah, he himself went to America. He says that in the Conscientism, a book that he wrote, he decided to go to America where he got a different education. He got a different teaching there because remember at that time, America was going through civil rights, freedom fights. I mean, and this was a black university in America. Lincoln was black, largely focused on black students at the time, which helped him a lot. But all of those who went through the colonial system, they further indoctrinated them. They further indoctrinated and put wool over their eyes. The thing here with colonialism is that you think you are in control because when we got our independence in the 70s, we thought we had the whole lot, lock, stock, and barrel. But unfortunately, we only had the flag and the national anthems and maybe some power to rename our countries, give them the names which we wanted. But the majority of power remained with our former colonial masters. And this is something which I'll put you back to the group again to say, think again. The capital comes to this for something. They know that why they came here, and they know how precious our country is. Do you think they will give us the power back that easily? I think this is where we should have thought deeply about it. Unfortunately, we are now taking classes, and it's not even the whole lot of us. But we need to think deeply about how the biggest one of education.
Thank you. Yeah, Coco, thank you so much. So Coco has come in there, Sister Soma, and for the benefit of all of us to throw light on the fact that it took a sitting president, one of the leading presidents in that part of Africa, 10 years for them to understand what Nkrumah was saying. Now, the reason I raise this is that, you see, what it meant was that people like Magafuli didn't understand. They didn't understand anything. Because if Magafuli understood what Brother Nyerere was talking about, he wouldn't step into the Tanzanian presidential office and think that he can change Africa alone. When the president of Ethiopia, somebody remind me his name, please. The president of Ethiopia, the current one. Somebody remind me his name.
Imperial Highness.
No, the current president of Ethiopia.
Abiy.
Abiy, that's it. Abiy. When Abiy had a problem with Egypt, what Abiy did was he went to the African Union, calling the African Union, held meetings with the African Union, members of the African Union, said, look, let's sort this. I want the African Union to sort this out. That was Abe's approach. What was Egypt's approach? Egypt went to America and called America to come and solve the problem. And Abe said, no, the African Union will solve the problem. And then what then happened was that members of the African Union then said to America, we don't need you in this matter. We can solve it ourselves. You see, and that is the way forward. We need a continental government that can sit down and think about our problem and solve our problem. And the problem we have is that currently our current leaders are not thinking in those terms. Brother Coco in his presentation said, and he said this before, that we got the anthem and the flag. And after Brother Coco, that he shouldn't put it that way, because we didn't just get the anthem and the flag. We got power. Yes, the new colonialists fought back and got some of the power back. In fact, if not all the power back. But initially, if you take Ghana, for instance, from 1957 after 1960, when the Queen was the head of state, we didn't have a president. We had the head of state, the Queen. Yeah. Then when Ghana became a republic in 1960, then we had our own president, who was an African. Between 1960 and 1966, Ghana implemented development plans that developed the country very rapidly. So we had things like the Kosovo Dam, the Tamahaba, the first motorway, when Britain even didn't have a motorway at the time. The great UK never had a motorway. When Ghana built its first motorway, some people forget this sometimes. So these were rapid developments until neo-colonialism stepped in through the police and the soldiers, and there was a coup in Ghana in 1966. So I tell Brother Coco that I'm telling Brother Coco that it wasn't just an anthem and a flag. We got real power back, but the neo-colonialists fought back. The way Museveni would put it is that what has happened is that Museveni says that what they failed to do is what Nkrumah told them to do. But remember, when people like Museveni were fighting, people like Nkrumah were long gone. Yeah. But what Museveni said is that when they were fighting the imperialists, they all collaborated. All of them on the continent. They hold the South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, West Africa. In fact, Mugabe was trained in Ghana, as you know. His wife is from Ghana. That's where he got his wife from, because he was in Ghana where he was trained. You see, Egypt, Ben Bella and the Algerians, that they were all coordinating. And then we had China come in to help us. Then USSR also was on our side, as was Cuba. As for Cuba, they even sent soldiers to fight in Angola. So what Museveni is saying is that they collaborated and coordinated. The problem was after some of them got independence, they stopped the coordination. And because they stopped the coordination, the imperialists then have struck back. So what you see so now to come back to the question you raised, which is, are the coup makers in Niger, Niger, are they a coup in the interest of the people? My answer is that I haven't heard anything from them that tells me that they know what they are doing. Because so far, Burkina Faso has had a coup. Mali has had a coup. Now Niger. Did Chad have a coup? I don't remember if Chad had a coup as well. But we had the French territory, new colonial territories, all had a coup. So far, I haven't heard from any of them calling for an all-African government. None of them. I haven't heard any of them. You see, and so they are going down the Magafuli route again, where in a few years' time somebody will assassinate them, and then we are back to ground zero again. You see, somebody from within the military itself will be bought over, and then what will happen? They will then assassinate a coup leader, a president. You know, just like Thomas Sankara was murdered by someone that grew up in his own father's house. You see, his own father's house. They took in Campore, that guy. They took him in. Thomas Sankara's parents understood, looked after that young man. But when the French brought him over, what did he do? He murdered Thomas Sankara. There are people here like Brother Pigeon who know the story more than I do. So the answer to your question, Sister Soma, is that I haven't heard anything so far from Mali, from Niger, from Chad, from Burkina Faso. I haven't heard anything that tells me that they can even liberate themselves as a government. Even as a government, I am not even sure they can even liberate themselves, because they haven't said anything. They haven't even called on, as far as I know, they haven't even called on sympathetic African governments to come on their side. Nothing. Rather, it is when the ECOWAS, I might be wrong, those of you here who know the story more can step in. But as far as I know, when ECOWAS threatened to take the military in, led by a president who hasn't himself been affirmed as a president, because the matter is still in the court, took the matter to his Senate, and the Senate said, no, we don't want to do it. We don't want a military intervention there. It was when they threatened military action. That was when Niger and Burkina Faso and Mali said, well, if you go into Niger, we will declare it as a war against us. So we will also fight on the side of Niger. So to summarize, I have not seen any evidence that. Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence, Brother Pidge. I haven't seen any evidence that they can even save themselves, let alone save Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I haven't. And Brother Michael was raising the question. Yeah, hold on, Pigeon. Brother Pigeon. Brother Michael was raising the question of whether they can even fund a military intervention. The answer is they can't. So what will they do? They're going to invite France and the US to give them weapons. And then what will happen? The governments of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso has a sea border. It's not landlocked like Niger. Yeah, it's not landlocked like Niger. So what will happen? Russia, because they've asked Russia for weapons, Russia will also give them weapons. Then what will happen? We'll have Ukraine all over again. We'll have a proxy war. So if the US and France fund the ECOWAS, then Russia and the Chinese will also fund the Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. So what will happen? So there you go. So this is not looking good at all. But the West African leaders are too stupid, excuse my language, but they are not thinkers. They're not thinkers like so many others. Yeah, they don't think. They are not thinking. Is that they are being controlled. They are being told what to do and so on and so forth. Let me pause there. Brother Pigeon, you wanted to say something.
They are thinkers. They're greedy.
Yes.
They are not thinking. Are they thinkers? They are not thinkers.
They're thinking about their pockets and their bank
account. That kind of thinking, you mean? Yes, Brother Pigeon.
Okay, Brother Kwame. I wanted to inform you that Brother Fokwa, who was supposed to do the presentation, had delayed a bit to do his presentation, but I'm informed that he joined the group with another name and he has been here. It's now 19 minutes to our time. What is your advice? He came late a bit.
But he didn't tell us he's here.
I didn't know. I didn't know he's here.
Yeah, but he didn't know. But he should have
said that he's here.
But he should have told us, brother. You should have told us you're here. Where are you?
My apologies. I'm kind of clumsy actually with Zoom, to tell you the truth.
Oh, so don't say that.
I came in. No, because the truth, what happens is that
you're not clumsy,
Zoom,
brother.
The app on my laptop, I just recently installed it. I have always been using my phone to browse, so I had to send the link from the chat into my Gmail before I opened it here. So the profile name in my laptop is different than the profile name for Zoom in my phone. That is the complication.
One thing, is it Ambe?
Yes. My full names are Nkantwi Fokwa Ambe, but here as Ambe Nkala. Nkala is my title in the palace in Bafut.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's
okay.
sorry. So
that
error.
Yeah, the time is 2042. Well, are you ready to present?
Yes, I think Brother Michael had said we would do just 15 minutes. So
Yeah, we were going to. Yeah, I came in late, so the idea was for you to start at 8, but because you hadn't arrived, we continued the discussions. There's still we still have some time. Yeah, you can do your presentation. If you
Yes,
don't
Brother
finish, you
Kwame.
continue.
Please
You
make a
continue next
start.
week.
Please make a start.
Yeah, make a start, and then we'll continue next week
Brother
if you
Kwame,
don't finish. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
that's
okay, so
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
that's my
brother.
I can go.
suggestion that he can just proceed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I was
You should
suggesting that
present. Sorry.
yes,
Okay, then let me see if I can get this.
Yeah. Right. Whilst you're getting it,
Yes,
brother
yes,
Fukwa, let me
it's a
hear what.
PowerPoint, so I think it
Yeah,
says
fine.
share
You.
screen here.
Let me see if I can let you share. You should be able to share screen. Let's see. Let's enable you share. Unless we enable you share, you will be able to share.
It says
Yeah.
host disabled
Okay.
participant.
All right. Try it again. You should be able to share. Brother Pigeon, you were saying?
no, it's okay. Just I wanted him to just pick up directly so that we can have a conversation on his presentation in the next class.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Depending on how long his presentation is, we can even have a discussion. How many
Okay.
slides do you have?
It's about 26. Was it up to 32? There are photographs inside though.
Okay. So my
Yeah.
experience as a teacher tells me that you need 2 hours to present a slice of 30 slides. You need
Well, I'm
about
not actually
1
going to
hour
be
to.
reading the slides. I was just going to be
Yeah,
leaving them on the screen
it's
for
fine.
individuals to read and
Yeah,
then
no, it's
kind of
fine. It's
giving my
fine. But
contribution.
you need about. So anyway, you present what you can, and then we continue another time. Yeah. So yeah, carry on.
Yes, because naturally my idea is that I know that it would be difficult to probably even finish this. So it should be says you are screen sharing. Okay,
Yeah,
can you all
we,
see the
we
slides
can
there?
see. Yeah, we can
Okay,
see a
that's
white
good.
man. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so let's actually go back and start. The Francophonie shadow government part 1, just like you're pointing out, we're not going to have a lot of time to complete this. So it's actually in part 1 and part 2, but we'll get through this. Understand.
Just so you know, Brother Fukwa,
Yes,
if
sir.
you need part 3, we'll let you have it. Part 4 is fine. It's
Then
not a
that's
problem
fine
at
then.
all. It's not a
Because
problem.
it's
Okay, go
very
on.
interesting. Honestly, it's very interesting. So we can just let it be evolving because it's continuing research. And now that I'm actually documenting it, we'll have a lot to discover. Because just as I was listening to our discussion, we keep talking about the fact that we know our governments are not controlled by us here, indigenous people on the continent. And it goes back to the way that we were brought into the colonial system. So I devised this PowerPoint to take us back as far as even the origins of Christianity, because if we want to really look at what we are interpreting in our studies through conscientism, or as far as at least I am interpreting, Nkrumah is allowing me to really, like, I like how Brother Kwame pointed out even in our last discussion, Nkrumah is not actually taking a position. He's forcing you to think, and he's forcing you to think in the context of how should an African, if you can take apart all of this ideological conception about God and the conceptions about economic systems and all of this, how could you really evolve your own way of just looking at things consciously? And even our religion has an issue to do with it. We want to start talking about shadow governments, and it's not something that is new. John Francis Hyland, who actually was the mayor of New York in the early 20th century, he himself, if you just read the quotation that we're getting on the screen, the real menace of our public is the invisible government, which like a giant octopus sprawls its slimy legs over our cities, states, and nation. And this is a mayor making this quotation, acknowledging that there's something inherent in the system which does not actually cause it to work in favor of the people. Now, is this by chance, or is it somehow intentional? Now, we want to start talking about this idea of shadow governments. Now, just like we discussed even in one group there, when I talk about shadow governments, I'm not talking in the context of conspiracy theory that there's some sinister group of reptilian individuals like the David Icke tries to present to people, or that there's a cabal of people who have a raw intent bent on just masterminding a takeover, destruction of the world. I talk of shadow government in the context that if you look at even the legal system, our judicial system, a lawyer and a judge and even a prosecutor can know each other as far as having on work time. But off work time, they might be members of a particular church together, or they could be in the Western society. They have their country clubs, which is what when we start to talk about fraternities and secret societies, essentially we're elaborating on that there are informal meetings or formal meetings that group individuals together outside of what we would consider the professional working hours that allow them to collaborate and kind of structurize how they want the public sphere to evolve. So you see here, just I point out that a citizen of a republic who fails to actually acknowledge this fact, that there are no laws which actually ban a lawyer or a politician and a judge who are hearing a case in front of a court meeting to meet at a private country club, and then while playing golf, you know, they strike up a discussion. Oh, Mr. Trump, have you heard about the case that is against you? Oh, you know that I have a good lawyer who's on it. If I could give him maybe 200,000, I think he could close the case for me. And without them getting into details, they would understand themselves, and we on the outside would look at this as being some type of a system that follows judicial protocol and is based on justice for all. But in reality, if you look at even the way we do things here in Africa, we have a social logic about how we interact with police and things of that nature. This is how the world.
Brother, can I ask you a question? Do you want us to read what is on the screen, or you want us to read it?
Well,
if you want us to read it, give us a few minutes to read it.
Okay. So
is that okay?
No, but brother Kwame, is it possible that he can share the slides with us either in our groups for further reading?
He says
yes,
it's ongoing.
Definitely.
He says it's ongoing. So
okay.
So he hasn't finished, but he's doing a presentation, and one of the cardinal rules of presentations, if you put a slide on the screen and you are talking at the same time, what do you want the audience to do? Do you want them to listen to you, or do you want them to read the slides? So if you want to read a slide, then let them read it, and then you keep quiet. If you want them to listen to you, then there shouldn't be a slide distracting them. So that's
okay.
That's a cardinal rule of presentation.
Really, you should listen to me, and then if you can multitask, what I'm saying is already
we
in
can't
the slide.
multitask. We can't multitask. You either let us read it, and then we listen to you explain, or you explain, and then there's no slide for us to read.
Okay, then listen to me and then take the slide after.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, listen to me and then take the slide after.
All right, carry on. Yeah, carry on then. We'll listen to you.
Just in the context of what I was even talking about, without getting into even the church and getting at the idea of Templarism. Everyone knows George Soros, I'm sure. Very, very wealthy man. They say 27th richest man on the face of the planet. And even with the recent issue with the Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd, there was a big, some people might want to call it a conspiracy theory. You see it, but if you really put conspiracy theory in the context, like, where's my definition here? Good. That when we take a simple analysis of the recorded history of humanity, it reveals that two or more people have often come together discreetly and done things away from the public eye with intentions that they didn't actually present to us, intentions that we knew about them. We would have looked at them to have been against our, should I say, perhaps our best interest is the way of looking at it without speaking in too many deep terms of legality. But when we're talking about conspiracy in the context of a criminal definition of it, it just simply would mean that you have two or more individuals meeting to discuss to commit a crime in the future, even though I've elaborated it in that long explanation there in the red, you see. And to say that we don't have this happening on a day-to-day basis as far as governments are concerned, when we have even individuals like George Charles. I don't know if anyone is really focused on looking at the slide, but if we get back to George Soros, there's actually a news clipping here from Reuters, because people will, like I said, I want to give us this idea that people will allege that this type of conception is illogical. It's not sound reasoning, that it's conspiracy theory and it's somehow bogus logic. But when you have, this is Reuters, a very powerful news agency on the earth, confirming in the article that Black Lives Matter did receive, of course, about $12 million US from various organizations, including the Open Society Foundation, which George Soros is the founder of. And Open Society Initiative is noted for receiving funds as an organization on the earth, and even in Eastern Europe, when they had the whole shakeup with the Soviet Union, they implicated George Soros and his organization as being a part of it. So when we get facts, we see the news confirms it, but some people say that it's shadow government. It doesn't exist. It's conspiracy theory with a derogatory context. It's like they're trying to downplay the fact that credible individuals, credible institutions might be disreputed when this type of knowledge is pointed out about them. So they downplay the individuals or journalists or activists or historians or scholars or just individuals who are putting common sense logic together, interpreting the news and the history and seeing how it's evolved to present this idea as being people who are on the fringe or they are insane. But there's no smoke without fire, I think we often do say in Africa, because we want to start tracing our complaint about our leadership back to its origins. You see, we have to go back to our religious basis and look at the fact that we come from monarchical systems, which had what I call nature-based spiritual systems or shrines behind them, and whole priesthoods and cosmologies before we were invaded. Now, this structure, just like you see the Roman Catholic system coming from Europe, that is their own shrine. That is their own spiritual system. That is their own cosmology, akin to what we had indigenously. But they were able to successfully export it to us and convince us that their version or cosmology of reality is preferable or dominant, actually. Let me not try and candy coat it. We're not pulling our punches. They claimed they had a dominant cosmology or way of looking at reality than our own. And in the context of them having to bring us now their system, first we know that there were invasions by the Portuguese, which the Portuguese were sent by the Roman Catholic Church specifically. As we look at the slides, we'll start to get out all of these facts. We'll start to realize that they intentionally wanted to convert our religion first, because when we talk of religion, we're talking about our subconscious minds. When we talk of spirituality, we're talking about the way our brains reason. If you even take the term spiritus and try to equate it etymologically, you'll see that the Latin word spiritus is in English translated to breath of life. And that translation is in the book of Genesis. It should be around, I think Genesis chapter 1, 26 or 27, where they talk about how God breathes the breath of life into Adam. I'm sure we're all familiar with this story. And he becomes a living man, an animated man. They say essentially the Nesham becomes Nefesh. Nesham is the Hebrew word that means spirit. And Nefesh is a Hebrew word that could be related to soul or being, essentially. So they're saying that spirit animates this flesh and he becomes awakened, conscious, so to speak. So the word spiritus, when you break it down, it's not supposed to mean something mystical or strange that we can't grasp in our understanding, but it means that we have a relationship to the natural universe and our inward nature, our subconsciousness. We sleep, we dream. When we're asleep, we're in a subjective state of consciousness. When we're awake, we're in an objective state of consciousness. And because we've been on the planet for eons and civilizations, we've developed ways that this can be manipulated. This can be actually understood. And we base now our whole cosmology, the days of the week, the months, all of it is oriented into a system that relates in one way or another to these subconscious principles. And that is what they have done by exporting now their religious system into our own and usurping our government. You cannot have a religious system without some type of spiritual cosmology behind it. So we have a map here that just gives us a type of idea, an idea of what the Roman Empire looked like before Constantine. Because when we start talking about Christianity, we have to actually understand how the empire was vast and how when the empire then fell, it became now the priority of the remaining remnants of the Roman Empire, which became the church, to try to gain back the empire. So we should not leave our brains in a context of thinking that it's just a religious or a spiritual authority that was evolving out of Rome that had humanitarian concerns about spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ to make, how do they say, the Great Commission was to make disciples of all men and all of that. These are rhetorics from a religion. The organization of the Vatican and the papacy represents the Roman Empire. And we'll trace that out and explain to you how, with Constantine founding the Christian religion officially with the Council of Nicaea in 325. So we have a map now that really gives us the vastness of it. You see, they had never come below the Saharan desert, at least not in records that we have in documentation. So you have to pay attention to this area of what was Hispania, and this area of Morocco. because this area too was actually not breached until about the 15th century. So you start to realize that Christianity actually was contained in this region of the planet until the 15th century, that us Africans below the Saharan desert, we had not interacted with this religion to the extent that we would have even had to relate its cosmological value to our evolution of our political and spiritual and cultural systems. So we have imagery once again of the great Constantine, because the imagery is very important. In the long run, we're going to start to see how these crosses, these eagles, these symbols from Rome, which were instituted to symbolize the Roman military. Constantine claimed he had a vision.
Foucault,
Yes.
1 minute for you to wind up for today and then continue next Saturday.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Because our meeting, even when our meetings start late, they must always finish on time.
100%,
So
100%,
that we are known as timekeepers. You know,
Start
we don't do African time.
Yes, for
Can
sure,
we,
for sure.
Can we agree
Yeah,
this
so-
week on start time for Brother Farquhar? Can we agree on a start time for next
Yeah,
week, please?
Yes,
7
it's just
o'clock
that
is
issue
fine.
with 7 o'clock is
o'clock
very
is
fine.
fine.
It's no trouble. It's no
It's
trouble.
fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's no trouble. Nothing needs
okay.
to change. Like I said, it was
So-
just a technical issue that
Yeah,
it
that's
can't
fine.
repeat
So
itself.
wrap up for in the next 1 minute, and then we'll bring the meeting to a close and continue on Thursday our philosophical discussion.
Okay, so
But some of
just
the
in a very
some of
rapid,
the things you are discussing will pop up on Thursday anyway. In the philosophical class. Yeah, right. Yeah, wrap up in the next 1 minute. Thank you. And
Good,
brother, when I
good,
say
good.
1 minute, I mean 1 minute. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I've got you. I've got you. So essentially what we're trying to bring up that we will link to later is that you have a system that has evolved from Rome that you can identify even in African context today. By the time you've looked at imagery of military regalia on people like Napoleon and Charles de Gaulle particularly, who have been individuals in this Jesuit Knights Templar system who had a strong impact on Africa. We know of Charles de Gaulle's relationship to the Brazzaville Conference, and was it 1944? So as we'll be evolving, we'll be seeing that these individuals from Europe have a core type of cryptocracy that they interact with, which they have brought our leadership into, which linking to all of these symbols makes it apparent that we are in a system that we need to be very aware of so that we can counter it and create alternative political systems, or at least ideologies that can help us control our environments better. I think that's the best way to conclude it. And then if anyone's interested, maybe I might share the slides that we have gone through into the group so that people can read up that far. And after that, we'll just go gradually. But it's a very interesting topic. Please,
Thank you.
apologize for the late beginning, because it would have been more enjoyable if we had
Don't
covered
apologize. Don't apologize. Fine. My advice is don't share these slides now. Hold on to it.
Okay.
I don't think it's a good idea to share them now because some people wouldn't even know what it means and why it's there. And so let's finish all the presentation and then share the slides.
Okay. And then if there's any questions, I can always give side information to read for the reading.
You don't have to follow my advice, but that's my advice. But you don't have to follow it. If you want to share it, that's your decision. But my advice is don't share until you finish the presentation. Right. Thank you all very much for attending. Thank you, Brother Pigeon, for stepping in as you always do, in terms of sharing and hosting, sometimes when I am late. Thank you, Sister Soma, for your invigorating thinking and thoughts. We'll need you in the Thursday meetings to share your thinking. And thank you all for coming. The meeting is now officially finished, and we shall continue on Thursday with our philosophical discussions. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Have a nice weekend.